Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Starting with Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, 8 lines from the bottom. The Gemara continues discussing Hallelujah. Says the Gemara, is it in the beginning of a paragraph or is it in the end of a paragraph? When it is indeed something that has it in the beginning of a paragraph and the previous paragraph has it at the end, there's no question. We're talking about over here when you have between two paragraphs, one Hallelujah. Which one does it refer to? The first paragraph as the end of that paragraph or the beginning of the following paragraph? Says the Gemara, Rav Chisda, Hallelujah Soif Pirko. Rav Chisda is of the opinion that Hallelujah is at the end of a parak. Rabba bar Rav Huna Omar Hallelujah Reish Pirko. Whereas Rabba bar Rav Huna argues and says it goes in the beginning of the following paragraph. Omer Rav Chisda Chazina Luhu Tatile Debei Rav Chanin Barav Dichsibu Hu Hallelujah Be'emtza Pirko. He's eyewitnessed the Tehillim in the household of Rav Chanin Barav, and I saw that it was written Hallelujah in the middle, in between Prokim. In other words, he was in Suffolk. Al Misafkele, he didn't know if it goes at the end of the first paragraph or the beginning of the following paragraph. Omar Rav Chanin Barav Hakol Moedim, but everybody agrees that when it comes to the following psukim, the following paragraphs, everybody agrees that indeed it goes in the beginning of the parak. B'tilas Hashem yidaber pi v'varkol basar Hashem kocha lamvoed. Then it says Hallelujah is the Basar Reish Pirka. It's going on the beginning of the next parak. Rosha Yire V'koas. It says in the pasuk, the Rosha will see this and he'll get angry. Shinov Yachroik V'nomos. His teeth will gnaw and they will melt. V'taivas Rishoyim Toived. The desire of the Rishoyim shall go lost, shall be destroyed. Hallelujah, the Basra Reish Pirka. The Hallelujah is going on the beginning of the subsequent paragraph. V'shoim de Beis Hashem. Then it says Hallelujah, the Basra Reish Pirka. That's also referring to the Hallelujah in the next following paragraph. So there, everybody agrees in these psukim that indeed the Hallelujah is going to go on the second of the two paragraphs, the beginning of the second. Kare Moisivin Af Es Elu. The Bale Mikra, they added even the following two places where we find that the Hallelujah is going on the beginning of the second paragraph. Mincha b'derech yishtal ken yarim roish. Hallelujah the Basra Reish Pirka. Again, the Hallelujah is going on the subsequent paragraph. Reishis chochma yiras Hashem. Seichel toiv l'chol haosehem. Hallelujah the Basra Reish Pirka. The Hallelujah is also going on the beginning of the next paragraph. The Gemara says, Neima kitanoi. Maybe it's a machlokes indeed, tanoim. We can suggest that it's not a machlokes amoroim, but really if it's a machlokes tanoim, more fundamentally. Ad heichon hu oimer, because it's asked, how much of the Hallel do we say at the end of Magid? The portion of Hallel, how much do we say there? Because we only say Mikzas Hallel, and then finishing off the Hallel afterwards, after the Birkas HaMozon, after the Suda. So the Gemara wants to know how much indeed do we say of this Hallel. So it's Machlokes we saw. Beis Shammai yomim ad em habonim smecha. Ubeis Hillel yomim ad chalom l'mayno mayim. Beis Shammai says it's in only the first paragraph. As he says in the end of that first paragraph, em habonim smecha. Beis Hillel says it's the first two paragraphs. As it says, chalom ish l'mayno mayim. V'tanya idoch. However, there's another brayso that asks the same question. Ad heichon hu oimer. Until where does he say the Hallel? Ubeis Shammai oimim ad betzeis Yisrael mimitzrayim. Beis Shammai says until betzeis Yisrael mimitzrayim, which is the beginning of the second paragraph. Ubeis Hillel oimim ad loilonu Hashem loilonu. And Beis Hillel says until the beginning of the third paragraph. On top of Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. My la b'hokem mifligi. What is the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? Is it not the following? Laman da Omar. In other words, what is the machlokes between how it stays? We know that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, we know that Beis Shammai says only the first paragraph. But what's the machlokes between these Tanoim who are explaining Beis Shammai in two different ways? The first Tana explains Beis Shammai as being until Eim Habonim Smeicha. The second Tana says until B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim. What's the machlekes? L'chara, they're both saying the same thing. L'chara, they're both saying the first paragraph. That's Beis Shammai Shita. So the Gemara explains. L'man domer ad Eim Habonim Smeicha Savar Haluka Reish Pirka. U'man domer ad B'tzeis Yisrael Savar Haluka Soif Pirka. That's the machlekes. The first of the two opinions says that Beis Shammai says until Eim Habonim Smeicha, he's learning that Haluka is going in the beginning of the second subsequent paragraph. Whereas the other one who states in a different way, Ad B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, he understands that the Haluka is at the end of the previous paragraph. Rav Chisda will explain that machlokes, meaning both Tanoim, according to him, and say it's not a machlokes. Really, they both agree with him. The kuliyam masavre haluka b'seif pirka. Everybody, both Tanoim, hold that the haluka goes at the end of the first paragraph. Man do omar ad b'tzeis Yisrael shapir. That's poshut. That's very good. When the one who says that Beis Shammai holds until b'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, then it's very good to understand that the word haluka goes at the end, meaning the end of the paragraph b'tzeis Yisrael. I'm sorry, the end of the paragraph of the previous paragraph. And that's why he says it until B'tzeis Yisrael. Uman da'omar ad eim habonim smeicha ad va'ad bechlal. But the one who says ad eim habonim smeicha, he's saying it's coming to include ad va'ad bechlal, including that paragraph. In other words, it also has then the halaluka at the end of that paragraph. Only he says in a way of eim habonim smeicha ad va'ad bechlal. The Gemara asks, why doesn't he say, if it indeed refers to the end of the first paragraph of Eim Habonim Smeicha, Halaluka, why not say then, he says until Halaluka? If you'll say, because we don't know which Haluka is referring to, there's many Halukas in the Tehillim, so let him specify and say, he should say, the Halil until the end of Eim Habonim Smeicha Halaluka, and say it very clearly. Gemara leaves it as a kasha. You're right, that's difficult. Rav Rav Huna will explain both Tanoim according to his reasoning. The Kuliyam Haluka Reish Pirka, that everybody agrees that Haluka goes in the beginning of the subsequent paragraph. Man de'omar ad heim habonim smeicha shapir. The first opinion who says that Beis Shammai says ad heim habonim, so that's very good. Saying clearly the haluka goes in the second paragraph, the beginning of the second paragraph. Uman de'omar ad b'tzeis Yisrael sover ad v'loy ad bechlal. Whereas the other Tana who says that Beis Shammai holds until b'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, he holds ad v'loy ad bechlal. It doesn't include the B'tzeis Yisrael, that paragraph. And therefore, it means to say that you only say until Eim Habonim, but the Haluka will be beginning of the second paragraph of B'tzeis Yisrael. V'neima ad Haluka, ask the Gemara, then why don't you just say ad Haluka? If indeed he says that it refers to the Reish Pirka, the beginning of the next paragraph, say until Haluka. Gemara says, "V'chiteima." If you'll say the loy nadin he haluka, we don't know which halukas. There's many halukas in Hillim. V'neima ad haluka je Beis Yisrael. Let him say until haluka of Beis Yisrael, and then we'll know. Gemara says, "Kasha." Indeed, it's a difficulty. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah that says, "We're chayseim begeula." That means not only do we then say Borei Priya Gofen, but we'll make a chasima of Geula. The Gemara now discusses the bracha of Geula. Omar Rove Kriya Shema v'Halel Ga'al Yisrael. The Kriya Shema that we say, that means the bracha that is Sameh Geula L'Tfila, that's after the Kriya Shema, that completes itself Ga'al Yisrael, as well as the Halel that we are saying on Leila Seder, that is completing Ga'al Yisrael in the past tense. The Tzloisa Goyel Yisrael. When we daven, we say Go El Yisrael. My time, what's the reason why when we daven, we don't say in the past Ga'al, but rather we say Goyel Yisrael? Explains the Gemara, Derachmin Ninhu, because we're being Mevakesh Rachamim, and therefore it's appropriate to say in the present tense that it should be a bakasha for the present and the future, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's now being Goyal Yisrael. Whereas the past tense is a shvach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim. Omar Rabbi Zera said, the Kiddusha, in Kiddush, he now discusses also a difference in the Nusach. Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvah Sov, when it comes to Kiddush, Asher Kiddishonu b'mitzvah Sov. Yet when it comes to Tefillah, we have a different Nusach. We say, Kadeshenu b'mitzvah Secha. My timer. What's the reason for the difference? When it says the Rachmei Ninhu, when it comes to Tefillah, we're Mevakesh Rachamim, we're asking, and therefore Kadeshenu b'mitzvah, we're asking Hashem that He should sanctify us with His commands. Whereas when it came to the Kiddush, we're saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded, He sanctified us with His commands, with His mitzvahs. Omar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. Rav Yaakov Bar Yaakov says in regards to Kiddush, when you say Kiddush on Leil Shabbos and who adin Leil Yom Tif, you also have to be Mazkir Yitzias Mitzrayim. Ksiv Hocha, it states over here in regards to Yitzias Mitzrayim, Leman Tizkor Es Yoim Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim Kol Yimei Chayecha. You have to remember you going out of Mitzrayim all the days of your life. V'ksiv Hasam, it states over there in regards to Shabbos, Zachar Es Yom HaShabbos Lekadishoy. You should go ahead and remember the Shabbos and sanctify it. That's Ayidei the Kiddush when we say Mekadesh HaShabbos. And therefore we have a Gezer Shav of Zachar to tell you that we're required to say Yitzias Mitzrayim in regards to Kiddush. Omar Rabbe Bar Shilo Ditzaloiso Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. In regards to Tefillah, we say the Nusach Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu sprouts the pride of the Yeshua, of the salvation. The Haftarta Mogen David. Whereas in the bracha of the Haftarah, we conclude Mogen David. So, l'char, there's a difference. Why the difference? Again, in Tefillah, we don't say, even though it's referring to the Malchus Beis David, Mashiach, sprouting, we don't say Mogen David. But in the Haftarah, we do say Mogen David. The Gemara brings, V'asisi l'cha shem gadol kishem ha'gedolim. And I will make you, David HaMelech, a shem gadol, like the shem of the gedolim, referring to the Avos HaKadoshim. Tani Rav Yosef taught, Zeu she'oimrim Mogen David. Now there's just like when it comes to the Birkas HaAvos, there it says Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and say Baruch Hashem Mogen Avram. Here we will also, in regards to the Haftarah, say Mogen David. But we can't say Mogen David in the Shmon Esrei, because then it would compare David to the Avos HaKadoshim. So we can't do that. But we could say Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. Omer Shur Men Lakish. I'll read the pasuk in its entirety. The pasuk in the beginning of Lech Lecha, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram Avinu the following: Ve'escha legoy gadol, I will make you into a great nation. Ve'avarcha, and I will bless you. Ve'agad lo shemecha, and I will make your name great. Ve'yeh bracha, and you shall be a bracha. The Gemara darshans this pasuk. Says Resh Lakish, Ve'escha legoy gadol. Hashem says, Avram Avinu, I will make you a great nation. Zeu sho'imrim Elokei Avraham. That's what it meant when it says Elokei Avraham. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to put His name on Klal Yisrael by making Avram into a great nation. Va'avarcha, va'arechecha, and I will bless you. This is going to be now a Tosefes. Zeu sho'imrim Elokei Yitzchok. In addition to Elokei Avram, it will be also Elokei Yitzchok. Va'agadla shemech, and I will also aggrandize, I will make your name great. Furthering, Zeu she'oimrim Elokei Yaakov. Yachol, I think, Yehu choismin bekulan, that they should all be then used in the chasima of the bracha. Tamulomar v'yeh bracha. That's why it says in the end of the words of that pasuk, v'yeh bracha. Becha choismin, ve'in choismin bekulan. You will be a bracha, and therefore I will complete that bracha in Magen Avraham. Omar Rava said, Ashtachachina lesabi bintu the bumedisa the yasve kamre. Rava said, I came in contact with the elders of the city of Bumedisa, and they were sitting and they said the following distinction: B'shabso, bein betzaloiso, bein bekidusho, mekadesh haShabbos. When it comes to Shabbos, whether it's Kiddush, whether it's Tefillah, we say the conclusion of the bracha, mekadesh haShabbos. B'yoyma toiva bein b'tzelusa bein b'kidusha mekadisho v'azmanim. In regards to Yontif, whether it's tefillah, whether it is kiddush, we make the same conclusion, and we say mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. V'amina lohu ano, and I then responded to the elders of Pumbedisa, and I said adarabah. I said, on the contrary, when it comes to tefillah, then there's no distinction between Shabbos and Yontif. Indeed, we conclude the same. What is the conclusion? There we conclude Mekadesh Yisrael. B'kidusha, the Shabbato, Mekadesh HaShabbos. When it comes to Kiddush, however, then when Shabbos we say Mekadesh HaShabbos, B'yoyim Tov, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. V'ana mino taima didi v'taima didchu, and I will explain my rationale, my reasoning, and your reasoning as follows. Taima didchu, the reason why you make your distinction by saying that when it comes to the tefillah and the kiddush, so it really depends on you say it depends on the Shabbos. And therefore, it doesn't make a difference if it's Kiddush or Tefillah. And therefore, you say Shabbos, the reason why you say Mekadesh Shabbos for both, is because Shabbos, the Kaviyah, the Kaima. Shabbos is already set and established. In other words, from the time of Maaseh Bereshis, the seventh day was always Shabbos. So that wasn't done by anybody else other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu when He is buried the world. The seventh day is always Shabbos. So therefore, bein b'tzloisa, bein b'kidusha, mekadesh HaShabbos. Therefore, you don't make a distinction whether it's tefillah or it is kiddush. You always conclude mekadesh HaShabbos. Yom Tova, the Yisrael havuk the kavelei, the kamel abre yarchiv v'kave l'shani. Whereas when it comes to Yom Tif, since it's Yisrael who are the ones who are being koveya, they're the ones who are changing by adding months into the year. And they are the ones who are setting the days of the year. Then Mekadesh v'Hazmanim. In other words, even though the Tarikh in the Torah, for example, Aleph Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, Yud Tishrei is Yom Kippur, Tes Vav Tishrei is Sukkot, but the days that will come out to be that date, that's totally on Klal Yisrael when they're Mekadesh the Chodesh. So therefore, since it's totally on them, being Mekadesh the Chodesh, in terms of the Kiddush HaChodesh, in terms of also the Ibur Hashana, how they add another month to the year, certain times, they add additional Adar. So then the conclusion is Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. It's Yisrael that has the Kedusha, and that therefore they're making then the Zmanim. Taima Didi, however, my reasoning is different. Tzloisa de Barabim Isa Mekadesh Yisrael, because since when it comes to Tefillah is done berabim. Therefore, for cover of the tzibur, we conclude bekadesh Yisrael, kiddusha de biyachid. Whereas the kiddush of the individual, Isa, b'Shabbos mekadesh haShabbos, b'Yom Tov mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. Whereas kiddush, since it's done privately, so if it's Shabbos, say mekadesh haShabbos. When it's Yom Tov, we say mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. That's my distinction. The Gemara says v'loihi, and indeed Rava, the Gemara rejects. Why? As follows: because tzloisa b'yachid milesa, b'kiddusha b'rab milesa. Are there not times when the yachid also davens? Sorry, when the davening is also b'yachid, when he davens individually, is it not also when a person makes kiddush, it's also b'rabim? Let's say in the Beis HaKnesses. So therefore, your reasoning is not going to be valid. The Gemara says, no, Rava's reasoning is valid. Why? Because Rava Savar Zil Basar Iker. I'm explaining based on the main reason. And therefore, when it comes to Tefillah, mainly it's Berabim. When it comes to Kiddush, mainly it is done privately. Although it's true, you can also make Kiddush Berabim when it's in Beis HaKnesset, but the main essential Kiddush is B'Yachid. The main essential Tefillah is going to be Berabim. The Gemara now brings the following Maisa. Ula Barav Nochis Kamei de Rava. Ula Barav, he went down to be the Shliach Tzibur in front of Rava. Omar Kisbei, Amay Kisabe de Pumbedisa. He then expressed the Nusach like the elders of Pumbedisa. V'lo Omar Levelo Midi. And Rava did not say anything. Alma Hodebe Rava. From here we can see that Rava, he was Chayzer boy. because he accepted the nusach of the Sabi B'Bedisa. Rav Nosin Avua de Rav Huna Braid Rav Nosin Nachis Kamei de Rav Popim. Rav Nosin Avua de Rav Huna, the son of Rav Nosin, he went to be the Shliach Tzibur in front of Rav Popim. Omar, his nusach was Kesabe B'Pumbedisa. His nusach was like the Sabe of Pumbedisa. V'shabche Rav Popim, and Rav Popim praised him for making the same nusach as the Sabe of Pumbedisa. In other words, that when he did daven, he said Mekadesh HaShabbos, as the elders of Pumbedisa did. So Rav Papa praised him. Omar Ravina said, Anai Kloi Lesura Kamei de Maremar. I once visited the city of Sura in front of Meremar. V'nochis Kamei Shelucha de Tzibura. And there was a Shaliach Tzibur who went to daven. V'omar, and he said Kesabe Pumbedisa, and he said Mekadesh HaShabbos, or Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, in the Tefillah. Just like the elders of Pumbedisa. V'havu Mashaski le Kuliyama, and all those who were present silenced him. In other words, they did like Rava's original Mahalich, because they said that that's not correct. Omar Luhu, Merema said to all the tzibur that was there, was silencing him, Shavku, leave him alone. Hilchas Kesabe de Pumbedisa. Indeed, the halacha is like the elders of Pumbedisa. And they didn't further silence him. So indeed, the conclusion is, just as the Sabe and Pumbedisa, in Tefillah, indeed, we do say Mekadesh HaShabbos. In other words, the Sabe and Pumbedisa's nusach, the way that they said the correct version is, they said that one should always then, whether on Shabbos, whether it's going to be Tefillah or it's going to be Kiddush, should say Mekadesh Shabbos. And when it's going to be Yom Tif, whether it's Tefillah or whether it is going to be Kiddush, they should say Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim.